Welcome to One, where we'll learn about the one body of Christ, one story at a time.
Welcome to another episode of One, where we learn about the many stories in this one body of Christ. And you're in for a real treat today. The opportunity to meet and talk with Leo Davison, who is senior pastor at a church in England. And I know Leo going way back to our times in Durham, England, when we lived over there for 3 years. So, Leo, it's just great to have you here, man. Welcome.
Hi, Robert. It's wonderful to be with you.
I'll tell you, with technology, it's crazy to think that you're all the way across the pond, and it feels like you're just sort of sitting here in the same room with me.
Yes, it does feel like that. I'm a little later in the day than you there, and a little bit colder, I imagine.
Yeah. When we were getting started, I was telling Leo that I was running the AC, trying to get, my office as cold as possible because I'm on the second floor. We're in the high 80s here. And Leo's like, I'm trying to stay warm because it's cold and you guys got a hailstorm. So a little different weather.
We had a hailstorm. We had hail balls about the size of a pea today. It was unbelievable. It was like something biblical.
Well, I'm from Texas, and so I've experienced not only golf ball, but soft baseball and literally softball size hailstones.
So well, you always do it bigger in America, don't you? So
it's all about Texas, right? You always are bigger in Texas. But hey, man, it's great to have you, and I just look forward to have a conversation about following Jesus and what it's like there in the UK. To do ministry and to follow Jesus and learn some of the similarities and some of the differences. And I think from our time in England, some of the things that we can learn from you guys as followers of Jesus. So I've been looking forward to this conversation for some time, man. I'll tell you what.
It's great to be with you. Yeah.
Well, hey, I thought we'd start off first, just kind of let people get to know you. Tell us a little bit about your family.
Yeah. So I'm married to Vicky. We've been married for, 19 years coming up. 19 mostly happy years. No, they've been good. We have been blessed with 3 children in that time. So Luke, who's 16, just doing his A-levels here, which is like the upper qualifications. And then Noah, who's 15, who's just doing kind of his GCSEs, and then Hannah, who's just started at high school, who's 11.
And so you guys now are where are you doing ministry? Where do you guys live?
Great question. We're based in a place called Stourport-on-Severn, which is kind of southwest of Birmingham, in the Midlands. It's very near Kidderminster, so if you've got any kind of Reformed historians who know about Richard Baxter there, it's his old stomping ground. Okay. And we've been here for seven years at a church called Christ Church, Wyre Forest, which is a small Anglican church, but part of something called the Anglican mission in England, which you might be interested to talk about later on if you're interested.
Which is the same evangelical organization that Christ Church Durham was a part of. Is that correct?
Similar. So they're not actually part of Anglican Mission in England, but There's a growing number of in the UK of Anglican churches that want to hold to those their kind of the confessional basis of faith of the historic Anglican Church and those kind of Reformed doctrines, but are uncomfortable or unable to stay within the Church of England structures.
Gotcha.
And so there's a number of disparate groups that are sort of now forming together. People have been forced to leave or chosen to leave for various reasons. And it's exciting to see some momentum gathering and also an intentionality to that as well. So not just providing a home for those who are unable to remain within, but also seeking to plant churches. So it really is wanting to be a mission for England, aware of the need for the gospel to go forward in this country.
That's exciting because I know when getting to know you and Vicky and just your heart as followers of Jesus and just as making disciples and just really kind of orthodox, sound biblical Christianity is just that the heart of you guys and your ministry. And we'll come back to in a second, but let's kind of start off with maybe kind of give us a feeling for how did you get to this place? Like how did you come to follow Jesus, and what led you into ministry?
Yeah, well, it goes back, I guess, to when I was 16. I had a friend who was a Christian, and we went away on his parents owned a narrowboat, a canal barge, and we went away for the weekend on that. And we were sitting there having a late night conversation as teenagers of that age do, and I just said that Christianity was a load of rubbish, and he said, "Have you ever looked into it?" And I arrogantly said, "Well, I'll look into it and then say it's a load of rubbish." So I agreed to go to a talk with him, and that night at that talk, just a lot of pieces of the jigsaw fitted together. So the speaker spoke about God, about us having run away from God, and it just made sense. I was a science student. I loved science at school. I went to university to do it. But for me, it was just amazing how the complexity of the human eye, and just the whole wonder of creation. It just marveled me. And so hearing about a God who made this world made sense. But it also made sense that if the God who made this world, I'd ignored for the last 16 years of my life. And so
Wow.
I think there and then I realized that actually, yeah, I was guilty of not giving him the rightful worship he deserved. And that night, responded to the gospel, went up to the front. And from then on, I would have called myself a Christian. And I think, so that's the kind of moment, if you like, where the change happened. But it's wonderful to see God's hand at work before that. So my parents weren't Christians, but there was a local family to the school I used to go to as a primary school when I was about sort of 9 or 10. And I used to have to go and stay with a childminder after school, and I hated her. She was awful. She used to serve us homemade wholemeal pasta that was like about an inch thick. It was terrible. But there was this lovely family, Christian family, who lived across from the school, and they would open their house up after school once a week for children to come and to do Bible study, really. And I loved it because it meant I didn't have to go to the childminder. I loved it because it meant that I was able to do sort of Bible comprehension, which I loved. But also I saw such an example of Christian love from that couple, and just the way they opened their home, and they were like sort of surrogate parents to me, or grandparents, and that really stuck with me. And I think that's been only came to me afterwards, if you like, to realize how significant that was, I think, in my upbringing. And so just little ways that the Lord was kind of preparing the way, both in that and also in feeling a dissatisfaction with the world around. I remember sitting there thinking, well, what is this life about? And so it all sort of, it came together at that point when I was 16. But I'm glad the Lord didn't return then, because I'm not sure whether I've really understood the gospel. So I made that profession of faith. But with that came the sense of, okay, now I've got to try better. So this is not the right way to live. I've got to try pleasing God. So I started going to church. I started reading my Bible. I started praying. But I guess I thought what was going on was I kind of tried my best to please God, and then kind of Jesus made up the difference. So he kind of did if you think about the bridge diagram, I built it I knew I couldn't build it all the way across, but I built it so far, and then Jesus kind of did the last little bit for me.
Put a few nails in and you're good to go.
Yeah. And then it wasn't really until university that I understood grace. And that was
Wow.
the transforming moment, really, for me.
Wow. When you realize that all of your building was for nothing, that was all him.
Yeah, that it was all salvation was completely by grace. It was all down to him,
Yeah.
and that just is tremendously freeing, because then you're not living out of a sense of obligation, but out of a sense of joy and thankfulness, and that sort of was a far greater motivation to live for him. And it was at that point that really I then shifted to think, well, this is the life that the Lord has given me. How can I serve God best with the person that I am, the gifts that God's given me, and the context I'm in? And that's what I sought to do from then on. And that's taken various different routes, but finally ended up kind of here in pastoral ministry.
Well, it's fascinating thinking back to your love of science, both you and the same with your wife, Vicky, because she has her PhD in neuroscience, if I remember correctly, right?
Very good.
And
Yeah.
so both of you guys are science at your core, and that like you said, you see the complexity of the world and the beauty of of science, and that really was part of your story and leading to the beauty of really the gospel and the glory of God who's made this complexity. That's really cool.
Yeah. I mean, often there's the challenge of science and Christianity, but certainly in my experience, there's far more scientists who are Christians than other disciplines, I think, because actually the models, the way that a scientist works is say, well, let's look at the evidence, let's test the hypothesis, and I think certainly that's how I went about it. And as you do, you read the scriptures, you look at the evidence for the resurrection, and you think, well, what are the options here?
Right.
And on the basis, what's the best hypothesis you can come up with what's going on?
Yeah, I think that's true. I think if you come into it with a sort of an open hand approach of, like your friend saying, hey, have you really checked this out and you haven't prejudged the evidence, but, you come to it with an open hand and a level playing field. And like you're saying, you look at the evidence on its own merit and you don't prejudge it with some preconceived, worldview of, miracles are out of play or, what have you. Then it leads you down that path of going, okay, if I'm going to take this seriously, then it leads you closer and closer, step by step, to to the Creator, and then through the Creator to Christ. And
that's really helpful. Yeah, the prejudging, that's what happens, isn't it? Is that the barriers go up, the assumptions are made, and then it's very hard to break those down, because if you're unwilling to engage and look at the evidence in a fair-handed way, then you've already going to come to one conclusion, aren't you?
Right. Yeah, you've already prejudged it, right? The case was decided before you got there. That's really cool because, coming from a context of science, and then the Lord leads you, and then leads you on a path you probably hadn't expected, a non-science path into ministry. And when we met, this was back because we lived over in England, there in Durham, 2007 to 2010, about August 2010. And so that's
it's
where
a long time ago, isn't it?
I
don't believe it's that long.
I know. In some respects, it feels like it was just yesterday. In other respects, it feels like that was just another, century kind of a deal.
Yeah.
But when Laura and I reflect back on our time with you guys, it's just with such joy, because we enjoyed Christchurch, enjoyed you and Vicky, enjoyed the people of Durham, the Christians there. There was just before going over, we'd really prayed, Lord, just let us be a part of a good church, really, healthy, Bible-believing church. And he answered our prayers, and that I think in a lot of respects, God had us go over there as much to be with you guys and learn from you. That was probably more important than the PhD. in being a part of that community and what different way of looking at following Jesus, and a lot of things that as Americans we think are like core to a church. In a lot of respects, those were stripped away, and seeing things kind of sort of being taken out of your context and going into a new one and going, oh, well, maybe I need to kind of think about this differently.
It's always healthy, isn't it? It's always healthy to go into a different context. I had a similar opportunity, not for the same length of time, but to go to Australia and based there. And again, it was so you're forced to reevaluate what you've assumed, if you like, and some things you come away thinking, actually, no, I'm convinced that in what I thought before was right, and in other ways challenged to think, okay, there is at least another way of doing things.
Yeah.
And I mean, I it's one of the great things about being in Durham as well. I really appreciated the fact that we get people from all across the world coming to do PhDs, and it's such a strong theology department that you get people coming to do that. And we were blessed by having that diversity in the church as well, those different views. So.
Well, one story comes to mind. You're talking about, you're forced to kind of look at things differently, and some things you go, yeah, this is right, and other things you kind of go, oh, maybe I need to rethink it. I remember when we'd been there about 9 months, and it was like, we need to be a part of a small group. And I remember on a Sunday morning, I went to you, and I was like, hey, Leo, Laura and I like to be a part of a small group. And so coming out of, my background, Southern California, bigger church, right? Like I expected, you should give me options. You go, well, hey, here's all the groups and here are the times they meet. And you choose one according to your preferences of time and, age group and, what's convenient for you. And you looked at me and you're like, wonderful. And you're like, okay, you'll be going to this group at on this Wednesday night at this time. And I remember it just sort of being shell-shocked, sort of like, wait a minute, you didn't ask my opinion of group options. And this sort of American consumer side of me was like, wow, that was different. And it was so good because it was one of those things when you step back later, you realize, wow, that was really healthy because that group that you put us in was so diverse, married, single, younger, older, and college students. I mean, kids, no kids, and led by one of you guys call them trustees, we call them elders. And was just really, really significant and healthy. And so I just want to tell you thank you for that, because that was one of those things that sort of made me go, you step out and you sort of out of your own fishbowl and you realize, wow, I was operating under some assumptions here that maybe weren't so good.
Yeah, I think that's I guess it's partly as well that view of small groups of what's the role of the small group in the church, and we felt it's very much, if you like, that's the heartbeat. So it's wonderful to gather on a Sunday, but the small group is where you really build those kind of relationships, and so therefore you do want that diversity of the church family, and actually, again, it's good to be put with people not like yourself, isn't it, and forced to love and to learn together. But I think that the flip side of that is that the danger maybe over here is sometimes you have to fit our structures or you're not welcome. And that willingness to sort of say, okay, we'll accommodate, we'll bend our programs to fit you rather than you've got to do it our way, or it's something that we maybe need to learn a bit more.
And the States, our way or the highway, right?
Yeah.
So now you've been there at Christ Church in OI Forest for 7 years, and kind of give us a feel for ministry. What is ministry like? Because I think one of the things that maybe for folks who haven't been to England would benefit from hearing from you is what is it like to be a follower of Jesus there where you're at, and more broadly in England in general? Because I think as you describe this, it'll draw out some of the differences between really being a Christian in the States and being a Christian in England.
Yeah, I guess so. Just to try to paint the picture from our town, So there is about 30,000 people who live within Stourport, and there are four churches, four sort of Protestant churches, and the number of people who go to those churches, all told, would most probably be about 150 people across those kind of four churches out of a town of 30,000. So the numbers are far smaller, I imagine. And if you then go through those churches, one would be liberal, two would be Pentecost, one would be Pentecostal, one would be Baptist, and one kind of evangelical. So a sort of real spread, but and diversity. And so most people, I think, would have within our sort of area, which is that there'd be a general respect for Christianity in some ways, but little engagement with it. So increasingly there'll be people who would be openly hostile, and would see that Christianity is either irrelevant or actually toxic to the society, that it would be better if it wasn't there. But in a place like Stourport, which is a sort of small, very static town, not very cosmopolitan, most probably there's more a sort of a general feeling. So I go into a local school to do assemblies, and there'll be a general feeling that that's a nice thing to do.
Okay.
And but the interest of exploring that further, or taking, or sort of even identifying as a Christian, meaning anything at all, apart from a name, something you put on your census, would be very little.
So that, I mean, they always say, no, don't do math in public. But 150 of 30,000, that's a half of 1% of your population that are attending one of those four Protestant churches. That's really quite striking. But it's in line with some of the numbers I remember when we were in Durham. Slightly better, but only marginally so when we were there. And the interesting thing in that is, I think the difference of how you go about ministry, right? One of the things that I was sharing with you before we started today was you guys, you, Leo, and Vicky, and others on staff were just so passionate about reaching people with the gospel. And so many things that you guys did as a church were intentionally designed at making disciples, introducing people, but doing it so through relationships. Like you guys really taught and modeled for Lori and I how to weave that intentionality of relationships with people who don't yet know Jesus, into really the tapestry of everything you did. I remember we were in church, so our first maybe, I don't know, 6 months or so at Christ Church, and I think again you were doing the announcements on Sunday morning, and you're going through the things that are coming up, and you go, oh, and guys, Thursday night will be men's night at the pub, be pub night, and so for a Christian America, that was just like, huh? The Scooby-Doo kind of like, huh? What? Larry and I kind of looked at each other like, did we just hear that correctly? Pub night with guys? And how, the culture there in Britain would be like Thursday nights are traditionally for guys to go to the pub, and then what I always thought was hilarious was curry, Indian food at the pub, which just cracked me up. But you guys intentionally did your men's ministry event there at a pub so that you could be where people gather to intentionally build relationships for the gospel. And dude, that was just like, just awesome.
Yeah.
You know, all the ministries weren't just like, about me. They were about how do we live this out. And I'm thinking about for you guys now in a church that's in that context. What's that like, right? Because you guys are in a place that's difficult for the gospel, let's say. What are some of the things you guys are engaged in? What are the challenges? What are some of the celebrations like for you guys as a church?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard work, and it's particularly hard work here and places like, because up in Durham there was a large student ministry, and I guess that students are at the cusp. They're rethinking everything about their lives. They've left home. Everything's up for grabs, and they've set no habits.
Yeah.
Where we are is far more stable and static, and it's similar when people move. When you move to a different area, to a different city, if you're moving for work, you're used to bumping into new people, making new relationships.
That's true.
Whereas we're a very static place, both in terms of culture, mindset, and physically. And it just means that people have their lives established, and it's very hard to get into those lives and then to see change, because I sometimes say it's like changing the turning around the oil tanker.
Yeah.
If you've lived with certain convictions and certain and everything around your life is shaped by those, it's very hard then to change, to say, well, actually, I'm not about living for the football team or for a family, but I'm actually about living for Christ. So it is hard work, and it reminds us that it's only a work of the Spirit that brings about that change. I think what drives that intentionality is a real conviction of the urgency of the task, that Jesus is returning, that when he does, there will be a day of judgment, and there are thousands here who are currently are going to meet Jesus as judge, not rejoicing but wailing, and many out of ignorance. And so that kind of forces us to keep on persevering with seeking to reach out. But it is tiring, and I think we're quite a small church as well, and that means that it's just it's hard work, and I think where we're at is thinking, well, how do we create those new relationships? Because again, a lot of people in the church have been in the same friendship groups for years. They've grown up with the same people, so they know they're Christians. They share their life with them, and you need to keep on doing that and keep on praying, but actually also looking to reach others as well.
Well, I think for the States, in many respects, we're heading towards that. That there are trends that are taking us closer and closer to where England is right now, and I think for the church in the U.S. Is in the midst of a real transition, a real kind of shakeup, and whether we realize it or not, that a lot of the ways we've done ministry are based on a presumption of a Christian culture from 1940 or 50 or 60 or 70 or even 80 or 90. But there's been a sea change culturally, really in the last couple of decades, and so for Christians, like, okay, what are we really about? Like this mission of reach me with the gospel and being intentional, with ministry and being intentional with relationships, and what I hear you saying, Leo, is perseverance and intentionality. Like this is not like a one and done, quick hit kind of a deal. This is you're in it to win it. This is a marathon, not a sprint, and
Yeah,
it
I think
requires
that's
that
right.
perseverance.
I mean, so the big shift, isn't it, is that you have to go out, because they're not just going to come in through the doors. We can throw our doors open as a church. People can know we're here, but they're not just going to walk off the streets, because there's huge barriers to overcome before that.
Yes.
Kind of Rico Tice gave Christianity Explored, which is an evangelistic course. I don't know if it's sort of got much traction over in the States, but so Rico was saying that in the UK, what it used to be was that now it's like hurdles. You've got various sort of obstacles that you've got to get people over, and even in our it shifted again to mean that then actually now most people are, if you like, turned away. So you've got to go out and, so if you like, tap them on the shoulder to get them to turn around to even consider Christianity.
To begin that path, right? You got to get them to
before
turn
even
around
beginning
and
that
consider.
path of the obstacles to climb over.
Yes.
Things like, Christianity's irrelevant. Christianity's is boring. Is all those kind of preconceptions that people have.
Yeah. Right.
Now, hopefully, the pandemic has slightly shifted that. I think it's unsettled people in a way that suddenly made them think, hang on a minute, I'm being confronted by death rates every night on the news, and it kind of stops you in your track and thinks, well, maybe life isn't just about this world. So I think there's a positive challenge in that. So it'll be interesting to see whether that does change people's attitudes. Certainly, I think there is more of an openness at the moment here in the UK to at least listen. But yeah, you've got to get out there because they're not going to come in. But then building relationships takes time, doesn't it? Building that trust, overcoming those barriers doesn't happen overnight. So it is investing in the long term. And I think we're encouraged to see that we're starting to see some of that after sort of 7 years, that we are starting to see a shift in some families that we've got relationships with and things. So
it's interesting. There's a guy in the States called Tom Rainer. I think you had mentioned you had aware of him and listened to his podcast. And so he used to be at Major Southern Baptist Seminary, and just really has his pulse on thousands of churches in the U.S. And it's interesting. He talks about sort of a 7 years typically for senior pastor, senior minister come in before you really start to see fruit. That it just sort of takes time, for those seeds have been planted to start producing fruit, and that perseverance. And I think that model not only just for a senior minister, but for all Christians, particularly as culture is less and less Christian, then there has to be those two things that you guys are talking about and modeling, which is this is important, right? It's a priority that we take the gospel out. And despite it being hard, we persevere because we love, right? I mean, just that's what you said, right? We'll be known by our love. And so you're going out intentionally because, man, what you just said there is so powerful, Leo, that you can throw the doors open, but if people aren't, if Christianity and following Jesus is on their mind, the best marketing campaign in the world isn't going to matter because, right, they're not looking at the flyer, they're not looking at the webpage, so you open the doors. So what's going to get them there? And it's going to them and demonstrating authenticity, demonstrating transparency, demonstrating, that this gospel thing is true by your very life, where they go, oh, maybe I'll listen, but they'll listen after 3, 4, 5 years, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's the big change, Leo, where the North American church where we can learn from you about that. I think that's a cultural shift that's going on here. That we're
I
at
guess
the
again, I
cusp
guess
of
we
learning.
hit it a bit further back, yeah. But because again, and there's still some members of the church who, if you like, still think in those Billy Graham days. They sort of go back
Yes.
to the 1980s Billy Graham mission, and you could still invite people along, and they would, if you like, there'd be a guilt. There'd be a sense of kind of, I kind of know it's true, but I'm not doing anything about it, so I should go along. And
Right.
then they hear the gospel and they're converted. But yeah, there's not that same residual kind of Christianity in society here. Again, it's all but gone from schools and things like that.
Yeah. Well, again, I think you guys are just, ahead of us however many decades. And, for us, when we see that and see what you're doing to learn from. And I think the great thing for us being there with you guys was seeing that in the midst of, a broader culture that was culturally dark, 99% of the people aren't going to church, don't know Jesus. And yet there was just this healthiness of you guys as believers because there was no other reason for you guys to be going to church. It wasn't like it was culturally accepted. It wasn't like it was going to, get you in with the business council. It wasn't like it was going to get you a promotion at the university. In fact, it was the exact opposite, right? I mean, it was going to be possibly a mark against you with the, the local business council, and you might, be passed over promotion at the university. And yet, so many people we bumped in there were like, yeah, we're all in. We're inviting people, over for lunch on Sundays so they can have lunch with us and then meet some Christians that we invited from church. And I'm just like, wow, you guys are like, this is top of mind to you, And so again, I'm grateful for that because I'm continually challenged of like, man, okay, Robert, step it up. Like this is good stuff. So I know it's a long haul and slog for you guys, but man, you're doing the right thing, buddy.
Thank you. Yeah, it is, and it's I think we're feeling that at the moment as a family. Is that again? There's been a number of friends who have come to church, and in a couple of cases have professed faith, but then actually have chosen not to continue, and that's affected the friendship because they're kind of they don't want to. They know it's in some sense they know the truth, but they don't want to take it further. But our presence reminds them of that, so they're keeping us at arm's length, and that's hard as well. So it is. The gospel witness is hard work, isn't it? But it's just as important and just as necessary, and if not more so. So we just need to keep on pressing on.
Keep on pressing on. I think the more we go down this path, I think those letters in the New Testament become more and more salient. They ring true. When you hear about the struggles and the challenges and and you go, oh, yeah, I'm identifying with that a little more. I see that, but then it's in those challenges where, like Paul says, right, that the power of Christ becomes even more evident, that in my weakness, he's known and seen even more.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I've kept hold of from my time in Durham was a session that you did for the staff on 1 Peter,
Really?
from taking your PhD knowledge that you were doing and grounding it for us. And again, that's so. I think that's so relevant, that letter, isn't it? Of that live such good lives amongst the pagans, and being those who are God's chosen people, His elect, declaring His praises. So.
Oh, well said. Yeah, that's cool. Well, at least something good came out of the PhD. Well, jeez. was like, once I get done, I had to spend all this time unlearning all that stuff I learned so I could, get on with ministry.
Talk to normal people.
Yeah, exactly. Learn how to speak again. Oh, now, for you and Vicky, so you guys have 3 kids, and all in high school age, and
Yeah.
so right, if I remember correctly, for the UK, you head off to what you call uni, right? A year
Yeah.
earlier than here, right? So Luke should be
You'll be
going.
you'll be 18. So you'll be 18 when you go. Yeah, in September.
Okay.
So our year starts in September, and yeah, you're 18 when you go
What
into uni.
when you go in? Because my son is graduating high school this year, senior year, and so he just turned 18 in May, and then in the fall he'll start. So we're kind of in that transition period, and launching, and it's fun and really interesting time, So if you got any pointers, man, I'm all ears.
Well, I'm intending to follow you. Yeah, I mean, it is. I think. Okay, I find great comfort in the sovereignty of God, in the sense that you suddenly come up against decisions where you honestly don't know what the right answer is or the right outcome, and you just got to do what you think is best, and then trust the Lord, don't you? And I think we've found that a couple of times, and I'm sure we'll find it lots more, many more times, that you can do what you can to guide them, and then you leave them with the Lord and trust Him.
Yep, very much so. Yeah. Bring them up to the Lord, and okay, Lord, lead them and guide them, right? Every step. So, for you guys going through this past year, this COVID year, what's that been like for you guys as a church? How have you approached this? Have you met together, not met together? What's it been like in terms of the practicalities of ministry, some of the changes, and then what has been some of the impacts on your church because of this last year?
Yeah. So, like all everyone, I think it was a sudden shift, a sudden transition to, and we chose to go on Zoom. Our size allowed that, and for us, the more relational aspect of Zoom, the more corporate aspect of being together, being able to see everyone on the screen, being able to have interaction, was important for us to try and maintain that sort of, as much as possible, that feel of church. And it was a huge challenge. So again, the demographic of our churches is a large number of older folk who wouldn't have been used to using kind of technologies like Zoom beforehand, and now they're all dab hands at it. But I got a great respect for sort of IT support as I was trying to guide all these ladies of how to, with not being able to be there, of how to use Zoom, and no, press that button down in the bottom right hand corner. In the same way that Robert, you just had to do with me to get this all set up.
You're a champ, man. You persevered.
But that effort was really worth it, and we've had a really encouraging time, I think.
Wow.
So we've been online, apart from we were able to get back for a couple of months just before Christmas, in between lockdowns, and we started back on Easter Sunday, being able to meet physically again, and I think again lots of the things which have been frustrations beforehand have become blessings during lockdown. So being relatively small, not having much of a fringe, and being has meant that we've been able to move on online, and we haven't lost many. There's two dear old ladies who just aren't able to get on, and sort of having to support them in other ways. But it's allowed us to do that. We've also been on Facebook and YouTube and sort of live streamed to them at the same time, which has again allowed us to remember that we have an external presence as well, and it's been encouraging to see a few people join through that. So I think that for the church family, it was a great time, and we've really seen growth in individuals as well. It's allowed us to take a step back, if you like, from ministry. Again, one of the things. So we're a church of about 25, 30 adults, and that means that to sort of run Sundays involves everyone. So it's not whether you're on the rota, it's which rota you're on as you turn up to church. And so I think for many, who were quite exhausted, actually taking a step back and has allowed them to sort of have a bit of a break, and for us to look at that and think how we develop that. So we've used the analogy of the army unit being withdrawn from the line to sort of refit and retrain.
That's a good analogy.
We sort of intentionally tried to use that, particularly in our midweek meetings. We got some people in to talk to us about. Some of my friends from Durham talking about intentionality in relationships, and we looked through our members, the criteria, sort of the marks of membership that we have, and we sort of worked through each of those and what does that mean in practice. So I think we've used the time well, and so looking back, we're very thankful in many ways. It's highlighted some of our weaknesses. It's highlighted the lack of regular relationships we do have with the community. I think so. Not having many formal ways as a church into the community, sort of other ministries, if you like, sort of no sort of like a no mums and tots ministry or
right. It's kind of external outreach kind of things.
Yeah. So that's, again, it's been helpful to reflect on that and think, well, going forward, how do we do that?
And having the church body kind of have that dialogue to kind of see that, and maybe becomes a greater priority for them individually because of it. Yeah.
And again, that's something
Wow.
We've come out of an Anglican context where it really is a one-man show with the vicar who does kind of most things, or at least has the sort of the focuses on one individual. And we've tried to develop more of a sort of membership model.
Wow.
So we just started that before lockdown, and again, it's given us opportunity to be in it together, if you like, and to develop those conversations. Okay, well, what are we going to do? How are we going to do this? What are we going to do as we come out lockdown? What are we going to do for Christmas and Easter? And also we've developed something called ambassador roles as well, which is identifying people in the church who have a particular passion for an aspect of ministry, children's, men's, women's, and encouraging them to sort of to take ownership and to have a vision for that area of ministry, and to sort of want to see that develop. And it's been encouraging seeing those individuals come forward and sort of grow in those roles. And so I think it's exciting to see what the Lord is going to do next.
That is cool to see. And it's just encouraging to hear that, Leo. Thanks for sharing that, because I think it's so easy in our human nature to go through trials and suffering, and we focus on the negative and focus on whatever aspect of the pandemic we didn't like or didn't approve of or thought was awful, and just go, that's where I'm going to pour my energies. And I just appreciate you sharing that, because it's that sense of like, okay, here's this really significant trial that you guys went through as a body, and okay, with open hands, Lord, help us, come together. And you've come together, grown closer, and you've simultaneously having a greater sense through some of the people in the body of like, hey, how do we reach out? How do I take more of a piece of the pie of ownership of sort of exercising these spiritual gifts, being the hand and the foot and the eye and the nose and the eyes, right? Exercising those things in the body. And so here's this really hard thing trial that happened. And yet if our heart's right, then that can be used to grow and grow closer to God. So that's encouraging, man. Thanks for sharing that.
It has to be. I mean, someone really helped me to see this. He was going through some marriage difficulties, and he said, I firmly believe that God is good. And I firmly believe that he has got my best interests at heart. And so what I'm doing is looking and saying, okay, in this situation, Lord, what is it that you're doing? What is it that you're wanting? What good are you wanting to do to me? The situation's awful, but what's the good you're wanting to do? And I think we've got to firmly hold on to that, haven't we? That God is good, that he's not mean and vindictive, that he has his purposes and he wants what's best for us, and he's going to bring that about. And he doesn't, the things he uses to do that might be hard, but the outcome is good. And so we need to be looking forward to that and working with God, because either we can work with the Lord in that, or we can resist him. He's desperately trying to do his good, and we're sort of resisting that. So I really hold on to that whenever I'm facing trials and challenges.
Man, that's beautiful. I think that's powerful and just a great reminder to us, not only how we reflect on pandemic, but really any trial, anything that we go through, and having that idea, okay, God, I know you're good. How are you working here, right? And how can I join you in that work? And your good purposes be worked out here. Well, dude, I think that's just a perfect way to bring this to a close, because that's just a powerful, good word for us, I think, here in the States and all that we've dealt with, culturally as a result of this pandemic. And having that, I think that, to me, man, that's the mind of Christ. That's the mind of Christ, and how to reflect on, like you said, a horrible situation, but reflect on it with the mind of Christ. So, dude, thank you so much for.
Thank you. It's been a joy, and it's wonderful actually, just for myself to talk like this. Actually, forces me to reflect and to think of to be thankful of how the Lord is at work. And I think our history, what's happened in the past, really shapes us, doesn't it? And it's been my time at Durham was so significant as well, and it's been helpful to think back on that and be encouraged by that as well. So thank you so much.
Well, I thank you, buddy. I really do. One of the highlights, of our time was being there with you and get to know you. And I'm just thankful for technology. We get to do this and hang out for a bit. So, again, blessings to you in ministry, and thanks for sharing all this and, going through all the technology snafus to make it work, man. You're a trooper.
Great. Love to everyone there as well.
Blessings. Well, friends, thanks again for joining us on another episode of One. We're hearing these many stories in this one body of Christ. And what's so cool is you see how God is at work, whether it's in Southern California or it's in England or all around the world. And he's got the same mission. The same mission is that we would know Jesus and that we would follow him. We would really live out the love that he poured out to us through Jesus, and we would show that love to the world. And so, friends, our hope is that you know Christ, and that if you know him, that you will follow him and show that love to others. So until we meet again, thanks so much. Take care.